I don't know whether Greece should leave the eurozone, but I definitely think that it should be on the table. You know, if you're going to have try to negotiate, you can't start the negotiation by saying we're not leaving. You have to actually be willing to leave. And in order to be willing to leave, I think you need to be building coalitions with other countries that also have guns to their head, and build what used to be called a debtors cartel. In Latin America in the 1980s, when you had what was called the debt shock, when Paul Volcker increased interest rates overnight, and the debts of the global south expanded very, very quickly, ballooned. That was the heyday of structural adjustment, which is now called a memorandum. But this is what this is basically the same story. And in that moment, there was a big push by left-wing economists in Latin America for the governments of the global south to band together and form what they call the debtors cartel, and come back to the IMF and the World Bank as a negotiating bloc, and refuse the structural adjustment policies, demand forgiveness for their debts, and also challenge the legitimacy of those debts, right? Because many of these were odious debts that were passed on by dictatorship, and I think there are arguments that can be made about odious debts today because of their origins. So I think there's negotiating power to be had, but I don't think I don't think you're actually going to make progress unless you're willing to imagine life after the eurozone. And I think it's worth looking at Latin America once again. If you look at Argentina after the economic crisis, how it was able to, it's not heaven by any means, but it certainly was able to exit the worst of the crisis. And that was in part because there was a moment in Latin America where there were a lot of left-wing governments that were coming to power, and left-wing in quotes because they weren't, they were varying degrees of leftness. But there was a new economic structure that was created, where you had Venezuela that was offering loans, you had Alba that was creating an alternate trade bloc, and that created the possibility to stand up to the IMF and to get out from under the thumb of the IMF. So I think it is very difficult for one country to do it on its own. But looking at the situation in Europe right now, it seems that there are more countries in trouble than not in trouble, right? So it seems that there's a tremendous potential for the countries that are facing these austerity measures to work together and turn the tables on their creditors.